something that I say along the way will touch you. I know it. Let's begin that process of crafting a meaningful life.
Here's Mary Crafts.
Welcome to Crafting a Meaningful Life. I'm Mary Crafts, and I have the opportunity now for 288 times to come with you and to walk on this journey of crafting our meaningful lives. At my age in life, you would think, okay, most of your life is done, most of it's crafted. And I hope that's not the case, that I still have decades yet to continue to craft and walk this process. At the end of every time that I speak, and I just spoke this week to this group of 1,200 people at a university, I say the same thing. The one thing I want you to walk away with is that it's never too late. And the second thing is that nothing is impossible. And if you believe that it's too late, and if you believe that there are things that are impossible, come stand toe-to-toe with me. Look me in the eye and tell me that. Because I stand here as a witness that it is never too late. I was 50 before I began to turn the rudder. And when you have 50 years behind you, it takes a lot of consistent turning that tiny rudder to turn the big ship a different trajectory. And you don't do it on a dime. Took me years. And that nothing is impossible. So many people, if you read the stats of people who were able to lose a significant amount of weight without surgery or drugs, the stats are like next to nothing, or that they're going to gain it back. I have now been nearly 20 years with my rudder turned a different direction, and I haven't gone back. That nothing is impossible. That someone would have ever thought of this fat little girl from Iowa now speaking to a room of 1,200 people, and that they were wanting to listen to me, that I had something of value to say, that I started a whole new career after my retirement at 65. This week, I celebrated 4 years from having climbed Kilimanjaro. And in my new home, most of you don't, I think, well, if you follow me a lot, you know that I'm in a new home about 7 weeks ago now. Out in my secret, sacred garden in my backyard, I've hung a photo on the outside of the house. And it's the photo of Kilimanjaro. For me, that was the summit of my new life, which launched me on a trajectory of something even greater. Now, I was 1 week away from being 66 when that launch happened. Most people don't start a new life. So it's never too late. Every morning when I'm out there doing my meditation in my garden, I look up at that picture. I put my hand up at it and I say, thank you. Thank you for one more piece of inspiration in this life and helping me craft a new life. So happy birthday to me on my new decade, right? It's a new decade. I have been now, is that I've been 7 decades? Or is this it's the beginning of my 8th decade. Okay, wow. Last week's podcast was by myself, and today is by myself. And I started on this topic last week of finding joy and what that means to find joy versus happiness. Happiness, I said, was kind of this external piece, and joy being this internal piece, that the only place it exists is in here. And about wanting to find it. And if it's the most important thing in my life, I need to spend time doing it. And I actually, on this podcast, laid out what I was going to do and committed to do it. So now here we are. It's about a week and a half later since I recorded that. And I'm here to report what has happened to me. in finding joy, in drawing joy into my life, in actually creating joy in my life. So this sacred garden that I have outside is different than my other home. I had a half acre, and it was big, it was expansive, where my children played, my grandchildren played. I had a swimming pool. I was like such a big yard. And when I walked away from that, I thought, where will my grandchildren play? Well, my grandchildren are older now. The youngest is 5, the oldest is 15. They used to come to Grandma's 2 or 3 times a week, and now they come every other week. And to craft my life around those few hours that they are there no longer made sense to me. However, I am building a ladder that will go over my backyard fence into the schoolyard that's right behind me, so they can go over there and play on Sundays when they're here. Because it's still super important to me. So one thing, this is what I outlined last week in case you didn't catch it. If you didn't, I want you to go back and listen so this will make more sense to you. I decided in my pursuit of inner joy that I was going to begin each day with a new regime. And a regime is such a harsh word. With a new way to love myself. And it involved 3 steps. To begin each morning breathing, to begin each morning with movement, and to begin each morning with focus and filling my life with what was important for me today. Few things I can say changed my life in a week. Well, this one did. And I have been recommended to do this by so many people. That the winners in the world do this. They're called the 5 a.m. club, where they get up at 5 a.m. and that gives them an hour to 2 hours to go through this ritual. I did not commit to that, but I did commit to every single day taking time for me to start the day with breathing, with movement, and with focus. There are some days this week I spent 5 minutes. There are some days this week I spent 40 minutes. I don't think I ever spent longer than that. And literally, if there was a single thing that I could recommend for you that was going to begin to shift that rudder and change the actual trajectory of your life, I think this is it. I just think this is it. So what I do is I go outside. I don't know where I'm going to go when it's now winter. Probably downstairs. It's very quiet down there, and it's a space away by myself. But my outside garden now is not big. It's tiny. I went from a half acre to 0.2 acres. So from 0.5 to 0.2. It's very tiny. But that's all right. The thing I've realized is that no one can see me back there. No one at all. My neighbors can't see me. In my other yard, every neighbor could see me. And my house backed up against the freeway, from crying out loud. The whole freeway could see me back there. In fact, the one neighbor had a camera that was pointed at my swimming pool in their backyard. But of course, you could see then from my swimming pool area in my backyard. And the other's neighbor extended back beyond my house. So they could just, anytime. This is very private. And so I start the day with breathing. I sit in my patio furniture, and I vary the chair I sit in and direction. And I sit. And the first thing I do is to start to breathe. Now, this is not breath work. If you've ever experienced breath work, you know the profound impact that can have. Breath work is where you oxygenate. I've talked about this before, and I still can't say that word. Every cell in your body, so it's awake and full of oxygen and ready to expel what's not working and inhale what your body wants and needs and what your soul wants and needs. And that is a wonderful process. That's not what this is. This is to simply wake up myself. And to do that by breathing. And I spend as little as 30 seconds, as long as 5 minutes, or however long my body needs to wake up and to begin to fill myself with oxygen. And just, there's no right or wrong here. When you do breath work, it's very guided, and they'll say in through the nose, out through the mouth. Use the lower abdomen. All those things are great, but they're not mandatory here. The thing is, I just want you to be out there breathing. Waking up your body, waking up your cells, waking up your life to a new day. And then whenever I'm ready, I let my body dictate that. I stand up and begin to move. Now let's talk about standing up for just a minute. Someday I'm going to do this podcast out there, and you're going to be able to see what I mean by movement and standing up. One of the indicators of age is your balance. Can you stand on one foot? How long? Can you close your eyes? Can you touch your nose? How long can you maintain your balance? Another indicator, and this is one I've used for a long time, is can you raise from a prone position on the floor to a standing position without the use of your hands. I've been able to do this for a long time, and I'm struggling a little bit with it now. I kind of get up part way, and then I used to just be one solid movement up, and now I kind of pause and still not using my hands, but then use my legs to really push that last little bit. So when I stand up, I mean stand up without the use of your hands. I don't want you to push yourself off. Stand up like we... Have you ever noticed in a movie theater that you reach forward to the seat in front of you to help you stand? On an airplane, do you reach forward to the seat in front of you to help you stand? Develop the core muscles to simply stand on your own. Can you do that? Now's the time maybe to find out. And if you're not able to do that at this point in time, no worries. You got the rest of your life to master that. And the longer that you can do that, the younger you are. So the very next step after breathing is to stand. I try and let my body dictate what I should do and what I can do and what it wants to do. I don't have my mind telling me, Mary, you should be doing stretching. You should be touching your toes. You should be. You know how I try and eliminate that word should from my life. I let my body tell me what it wants. And I start moving, the entire time. My little Google home speaker is playing Celtic meditation music. If you've ever listened to Celtic meditation music, Celtic being from, of course, the Emerald Isle and Scotland, and it's the most beautiful soul in-depth music. And sometimes they stick an Irish jig in there. That's why I asked for Celtic meditation music. And it plays music that just moves me. Find your own meditation music. You can find that on a place called Inside Timer. I like that one. Or simply on Google and ask Google to play a meditation music for you. I like the Celtic one. I get up, I move. I walk around to the east side of my house, and there's the sun. And I put my hands and my arms up to the sun, and I welcome its warmth to the earth now. Come down. And then I found out my body wanted to walk barefoot on the ground. Sometimes you might want to think back, when was the last time you allowed yourself to walk barefoot on the ground? Do we shield ourselves from the earth, the source of such strength and beauty? I walk barefoot every morning out there. Over on the side where there's not sun yet, I could think of it being chilly, but I don't. One morning, it was about 59 degrees out there. We had a little cold front go through. I didn't think and focus on the cold. I thought and focused on connecting with the earth. And I find myself out there leaning down from my waist and swaying and running my hands across the wet grass because there's still dew on it. One time I looked and there was a bee on my hand because it had been on the dew drinking. But like me, it knew I was not there to harm it. It simply was on my hand. I paused and it flew away. This is the freedom of no fear of the grass or the ground or Mother Earth. The second day, I became aware that my hands wanted to be flat on the ground. And usually I can do this at the gym when I'm working out, but this is only about movement, and it's not about keeping my legs straight. I bent my knees. My hands came down to Mother Earth. My legs came up to my elbows to support me as I knelt deeper and deeper onto the ground. This is going to be something that's going to sound really weird to you, and I'm going to share it on a national podcast. But I go out there, and in the morning I get up and I just throw on a nightshirt, and I go out there. Other than that nightshirt, bare naked. Is that too much to sound? So I'm out there, let me just say it, commando, without underpants. And when I kneel down like this, and your legs are open, I looked between my legs behind me, and I realized that my womb was open to Mother Earth. This is probably one of the most vulnerable positions a woman can be in. And at first I wanted to go, oh no! And then I was like, listen to my body. And my squat went deeper. My hands deeper into the earth. My feet solid and connected. And I paused there as long as my body wanted to. And I felt the energy pass between my womb of creation and Mother Earth of creation. We are one in creating things for this planet. My time of creating from my womb is past. At least it better be. But my time of creating is not. I've found out so many different positions that my body wants to be out there in my movement. Caressing myself, holding myself, finding the beauty of my breasts and allowing myself to sway with that, down to my womb, across my thighs, down my legs, up above my head, holding me, moving, not stretching, just movement. And between the breath and the movement, I hope to shout, I am wide awake. I move back to my space and I sit down without putting my hand back. I just simply sit. Find myself a comfortable spot, and the very next thing is the listening. Last week I talked about at this moment when you're involved with the focus and the fill. No fears of the past. No fears of the future. This is when you get to be focused on just now. So I've developed this little thing to help me. It is fairly difficult to focus on just now, not thinking of anything else. And if you have struggled doing that, then I really recommend this. This is just about right now, this moment, right now. Are you thinking about now, nothing else but now? And so I bring my hands in front of my face. And it allows me just to see now and focus. Now. And I ask, what is my message today? What is the thing for me to know? Sometimes I feel like this comes up from inside of me. Sometimes I feel like it's gathered in from God, from Source, from my spirit guides. And they always have a message for me if I'm focused on just the now. Today, it was perfect. That was my word. This moment is perfect. And I realized it was. And thus then, gratitude. Whatever the message has been, because the message is so absolutely beautiful, the feeling is then gratitude. When I'm done outside, the first thing I do is go find John. And he's on the front porch, giving me my space. And I just express my gratitude to him. It's my gratitude for him being part of this perfect moment in my life. It's been so many different things. One morning, it was the realization that I am nothing. That sounds weird, right? Because I'm the person that talks about we are everything. It was that I am nothing. I'm just like one speck in this eternity of time. And my life can mean nothing unless I'm connected to others. And when that happens, when I'm connected, then I am everything. By myself, a speck. Connected, I am everything. I am all beauty. I am all truth. I am all peace. I am everything because of the connectedness. Here, just a speck. When I am connected, and I'm not talking about just people, when I'm connected to the universe, when I'm connected to all creation, then I am everything. That's why I want to be always connected, always. Even in my solitude, outside, I can still be connected to everything. These things are available to you. Someone said to me one day as I was spouting some words of wisdom, how do you know these things? Like, do you read them? Sometimes. Do you Google them? Rarely. Do you, listen to podcasts? Sometimes. But I can tell you how I mainly know. And that I am no different than anyone else. I'm not wiser. I'm not more gifted. I'm not singled out as someone who should be given wisdom. None of that. I know things because I ask. Because I ask. That's a small thing. Because I ask. It matters to me. And I ask regularly. What does this mean? How does this work? What is the principle that I could learn here? I ask. I ask very specifically sometimes. What is joy? And I was given answers in the now. I heard a podcast the other day that was on, is the goal to eliminate pain? Because so much of my life is focused on that exact thing, eliminating pain in this world. I work in nonprofits regarding childhood sexual abuse, in sex trafficking, in around the world, orphanages of children who have no parents. My whole thing is eliminating their pain. And I thought to myself when I heard this podcast, is that the goal? Yes and no. It depends on your context. If you're talking about suffering and that things have happened to people, I think the goal is always to eliminate that kind of suffering. But even in the elimination of that kind of suffering, in the midst of nonprofits, it is never the goal to eliminate pain. Because it is through pain that we find our growth. Today when I talked to somebody at the UVU when I was giving this big 1,200 person thing. Afterwards, he had told me about his arthritis, and that he was at 35. He was not going to be able to continue being a computer analysis person for UVU. And, his life was, he didn't know where to go from here. That was his entire training. And I held up my hands. And I said, I know what it's like to have arthritis. I know what it's like to not be able to play the piano anymore. I know what it's like if I were still cooking and chefing to not wield the knife the way I used to. No longer laser knife. It would be a chop knife now. I said, it's time to shift. And the day will come when you will look at these arthritic hands of yours and you will see them as your greatest lesson, your greatest source of growth, or not. It simply depends on how you see the rudder. If you see the rudder as something that's of value to you and moving the ship and your trajectory, or do you see the rudder as something that's harmful and it's moving you away from what you thought you were going to be about? So it's not that we want to eliminate pain. It's that we want to understand it and focus it and embrace it as something that's going to move us from point A to point B. It traverses us through the learning. I can tell you what joy is not. Joy is not seeking a perfect life. It's not seeking a life without pain. It is not having always 100% peace of mind. If you all had 100% peace of mind, pain would be hard. This is not pain. I have no problems. I'm always in a good place. It's just, this is for my good. We go through pain. We go through crap. And it's okay to feel those things because they can be used as your trajectory. They're not perfect peace. That's not joy. I can tell you what joy is. It is that inner sense that you are bringing your best self every day. Joy is that today, this is my best version. Tomorrow it might be something different. Yesterday it was something different. But in the now, I am being my best version of myself. And when you know that, that is truly joy. That's joy. This week I also had another experience where I went on a hike. It was actually my first hike in a long time. And certainly the first hike since I had my bad fall in the house now 6 weeks ago. When I was airborne and flew off a step stool and miracles happened and I didn't end up paralyzed or dead. I was nervous. I was scared. Dare I use that word, afraid. What if I couldn't do it? What if everyone is expecting Mary, the badass mountain climber, to lead the way on this hike, 4 miles up, 4 miles down. 100 flights of stairs is the elevation gain on this hike. And I was scared. That morning in my meditation, I was given the now is that my body is enough. So I left and I went and I met my friend and we started up. And I didn't experience one piece of pain or one ache or one thought of that I couldn't make it the moment I put my foot on the mountain. Now, when I got back, that's a different story. I sat in my car and I was like, oh my gosh, get me home. When I got home, I slept 2 hours. And when I got up, I was like, oh, dang, Mary, you're not who you used to be. You used to be able to get up and go to the gym after this. But I realized I had forgotten what this was about gratitude for where I am right now, what I was able to do today. While my friend Chanel and I were on this hike, we talked about so many different things. That's why I love to get away in nature. We talked about so many things, and one of the things we talked about is boundaries. And Chantel is one of these people who loves everyone. and just opens up her heart to everyone and loves everything. And you just know when you look at Chantel that she is all about love. And she said, I really try not to have any boundaries. I try not to ever live in a place where people feel they can't approach me and they can't come into me, because that would not be love for me. I thought about it. We walked a little bit farther and I said, Chantel, I think love is having boundaries. And we walked a little bit farther and she said, how do you see that? I said, well, if you love yourself enough to set boundaries on the things that are good for you and the things that are low vibration, that's even more of a love for you. I try and keep my boundaries including all things that are of high vibration. And when you are in the middle of high vibration, you know what they are. Perhaps it's music that brings you to high vibration, or people that when you're around, you just feel their love coming to you. I can tell you it's not when you're scrolling for hours on social media. That is about as low vibration as you get. Maybe it's people that when they come at you, and they really come at you, they come at you with negativity, despair. I'm all about bringing people in to love them and to help them see a different vision until they push it into me. And then I have to take a break and say, when you would like more time here, can you shift and come back with a different vibration? They think about that. Some come back and some don't. But those boundaries that you set upon yourself is a clear sign of your self-love. Another thing that's a clear sign of your self-love is if you're able to forgive yourself. And you might think, well, forgive yourself for what? Everything. I really wanted to bring this to you today, this idea about forgiveness of self. And as I pondered on it, I decided to ask John what he thought. I said, John, and the reason I keep looking over there is because that's where we were sitting, having this discussion. I said, why do we fail to recognize the need to forgive ourselves? He sat there for a long time, and then he said, I don't know, I've never even thought about the need to forgive myself. I always thought forgiveness was about forgiving others. I don't think we can truly forgive others until we first forgive ourselves. Have you ever thought about that? And he said, quite frankly, Mary, until 2.5 years ago when I met you, I hadn't thought about 90% of the thoughts that are in my brain right now. Okay, I like that. That's good. But I am not ever able to offer someone what I'm not able to offer myself. It's the same principle of love. If I cannot love myself, how can I genuinely and truly love others? It's next to impossible. That's why we start here. And the natural outgrowth of love of self is love of others. The same thing as forgiveness. I cannot begin to understand even how to forgive others truly and deeply and genuinely until I've learned how to forgive myself. And John said to me, so he thought of an incident in his life. He didn't grow up with his dad. At age 2, they were divorced, his mom and dad, and his mom raised him and then later married someone else. And he didn't ever forgive his real dad, his birth dad, for leaving him and never coming back. And I said, have you forgiven you? He's like, forgiven me? I'm not the one that left. Did you ever feel that it might be you were the reason he left? Did you ever wonder? Yeah. Have you forgiven yourself for that? Knowing that you were not the reason? No. And suddenly the depth of understanding was there. He couldn't forgive his dad because he hadn't forgiven himself, for possibly being the reason his dad left. I called my daughter Megan and we had a long discussion about this. I asked her, do you think I can explain this principle on a podcast? Because you only have so long. And sometimes people are understanding you and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're thinking on my level and sometimes they're just listening to hear me talk. And she said, the people that listen to your podcast, especially if you talk about this at the end, totally are going to get this. Because the people who listen to your podcast, Mom, are people who are seeking and looking for greater understanding. And if they've listened this long, they're ready to hear this. I said, okay. Here we go. There are 4 levels of forgiveness. The first level is when you can forgive a situation. Like, for example, let's talk about January 6th at our nation's capital. And as I sat in horror watching the TV of what was going on there, and the anger coming up, and the anger against all those people that were there, and the anger that that's where our country was at, and the anger that the United States had allowed this to happen, and that's a situation. And I could forgive it and move it to the point of, what can I create to move us to a different point? Sometimes I'm angry that sex trafficking happens in this life and in our world still. Are we not more advanced than that now? Childhood sexual abuse. Sometimes I don't want that. Why can't it just go away? I've worked so hard at it. It's a situation, and I can forgive that situation exists in our life. The second level of forgiveness is when you can forgive a perpetrator, someone who has personally done ill to you. When we talk about perpetrators, sometimes we immediately go to sexual perpetrators, and those are very, very difficult to forgive. But when you begin to see that perpetrator as a victim, himself or herself, then it becomes a little easier to forgive them. And when we hear about things on the news, or we know of someone who was hurt by a situation, we had a situation here in Utah not too long ago where a road rage situation resulted in the loss of the lives of 2 people in the other car. And I was so angry with that person. And to step into forgiveness of that person. That what was going on in his life that could possibly have created that much anger, that he felt that was the appropriate thing, the right answer. This was him letting out all that anger. And I was able to forgive him. The third level of forgiveness is when we're able to forgive God. I don't know if you've ever done that. You've shaken your fist at the heavens. How could you let this happen to me? How could this be my life? Why didn't you intervene? Why weren't you there when I needed you? I pray all the time, and yet, in the depths of the problem, you were not there. You abandoned me. Can you forgive God? Can you let that go? Can you realize that God never abandoned you, or your spirit guides, or source, or the universe? never abandoned you, but allowed you to pass through the pain that would bring you to growth. So I always told my children, it's why I wasn't given a magic wand like a fairy godmother. I would have eliminated all pain from their lives. No pain for you, no pain for you. You will be loved and accepted by all your friends at school. You will play football fabulously. You will do this. You will do that. I would have done it. I would have used it. They didn't give me one. Good thing, because I would have eliminated all that pain that they needed, that I needed, that I still need to have the growth to be my very best self. And the fourth level of forgiveness is when you can forgive yourself. John's question was valid. What did I do to create that situation? Why would I have to forgive myself? I know of many situations in my life that I didn't realize that I was holding on to, that I had never forgiven myself for. Things from my childhood. I hadn't forgiven myself. I held on to them, or buried them, or pretended they didn't happen. But they did. And could I forgive me? One of the best ways to find these things that when you're ready to forgive yourself is to simply ask yourself this question. Or not ask it, to say this statement. I forgive me for. And just keep saying it until your mind allows you to see the vulnerable. I forgive me. I forgive me for. I forgive me for being overweight. I forgive me for not living up to the expectations of my mother. I forgive me for not being the perfect mom. I forgive me for that one time when I said that thing to my son that I said out of anger, and I've held it all these years, and I've said I was sorry, but I hadn't forgiven me. I'd asked for his forgiveness. I recently said something to John that I knew was going to be hurtful, but I was feeling hurt, so I said something back. I immediately knew that was like one of the worst things I ever could have said. And I went to him and I asked his forgiveness. And he gave it to me, of course, but why didn't I still feel clear of it? Why did it still hang around like a stone around my neck? He'd said he forgave me. It was because I hadn't forgiven me for saying it. Mary, I forgive you for sometimes still being the hurt little child, the little girl that lashes out. And because I forgive you, you don't need to do that. But if you do, I will be here to forgive you. After I went through that process of forgiving myself for speaking to John that way, I knew inside I was not ever going to say that again. I didn't have to worry about forgiving myself again. Those words were gone from my mouth and my mind and my heart forever. Now talk about inner joy. Does not that sound like joy? Inner joy, when you can forgive yourself for everything that's gone on, that you can be free of guilt, that you can be free of doubts about who you are and how awful you are, that you can forgive yourself. So find a time when you can be alone and simply say those words. I forgive me for. I forgive me for. I forgive me. And that's how we begin to find new steps into crafting our meaningful life. Namaste.
Listen to the full podcast today and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and more. Crafting a Meaningful Life with Mary Crafts.